All right. Good afternoon. My name's Nick.
I'm
My name's Jose.
Isaiah.
Oh, my bad. My name is Jose.
And today we're here talking about motivation in the workplace. And to get this started, I want to go ahead and define motivation, or specifically workplace motivation. And it is defined as the willingness to exert high levels of effort towards organizational goals, conditioned by the effort to satisfy some individual's needs. And that's quoted from Robbins and Mobbs and McFarland back in an article from 2010. Now, recently, there's been a lot of talk in the news and everything about motivation in the workplace. And actually, recently, there's been a Gallup survey that came out in 2019 that went ahead and surveyed thousands of people on the motivation at work, and it only found that 35% of employees were motivated slash engaged at work. Now, however, this is up from the 13% it was in 2013, but that's still less than half percent of employees wanting to be motivated at work and engaged in working. And that is something that is not great for business at all. And there's actually a story and a very unique approach to motivation that Amazon is upholding. And Amazon's unique approach is they are a very innovative and futuristic company. Like they have gone from being a book selling company 20 years ago to the most profitable company in business right now, being led by the richest man in the world. Now, their approach to motivation is very unique. With they not even boast, but they have long hours at work. They're very overzealous, and they try and get their employees to push them to the best ability they can be. There's stories of them being unsympathetic and high turnover rates, and there's even a crazy story. Well, they will pay you up to $5,000 to quit after 1 year of working. Now, how does Amazon, one of the most giant corporations in the world, run with motivation with such seemingly terrible working conditions? The secret is they appeal to people who are looking to build something of themselves. They are looking into using people's needs of wanting to self actualize and become the best of their ability, and they're looking for those type of individuals, and those type of individuals are the ones that they are aiming towards and trying to hire onto the company, which is what makes the company so successful. Um, just like as you can see, the motivation on Amazon, the 14 leadership principles they have, those are all kind of the things that dictate how Amazon runs and why they're successful with motivating their employees. They push them to their limits, but in doing so, they are bringing out the best of their abilities. And this is why motivation is important, because you need to find what works and what does not work for your employees.
So I'm gonna go off more off of that. Why it's important. So motivation is important because it encourages employers to act or move. There was a survey done by Gallup, and they found that only 2 in 10 employees strongly agree that their performance is managed in a way that motivates them to do outstanding work. So that means that 8 out of 10 employees, they don't really feel like their leader or manager is motivating them to do anything at work. So their work may not be as good as it could be. And so, contrary to that, employees whose managers involve them in things such as goal settings are 3.6 times more likely than other employees to be engaged. Um, and to add to that, it also ensures project deadlines are met. Recently, there was a 700-person experiment conducted in Britain by the Social Market Foundation and the University of Warwick, and they found a 12 to 20% productivity increase when leaders demonstrate a commitment to employee happiness. Adding to that, it also ensures that projects are accomplished efficiently. UNC Executive Development Program Director Kimberly Schwaffenboil says that motivated employees handle uncertainty more easily, are better problem solvers, and have higher levels of customer satisfaction. And points like these are really important in project management because you could be faced with a setback or a problem that came from risk during your project. So you're gonna need people to think quickly and try to figure out what to do. And so having these people motivated will increase that for you. And it's also important because not having um, motivated employees actually causes damage. And according to a Gallup's survey as well, or research project, they saw that disengaged employees are emotionally disconnected from their companies and may actually be working against their employees' interests. They are less productive, negatively influence their coworkers, and miss work days. And to add to that damage, poor management and lost productivity from employees in the U.S. cost an estimated 960 billion to 1.2 trillion. So that's quite a lot of money right there, which is why being a good motivational leader is really important in the workforce. And next, Isaiah is going to talk about what lowers that motivation.
Yeah, so now that we've talked about like why it's important that motivation doesn't get low, let's talk about the things that actually do make it go into the negative. Well, as you can see on the slide, there's a bunch of different reasons why an employee might find themselves feeling lowly, not that motivated at their workplace. And like honestly, there are far too many reasons that an employee could potentially not feel motivated at the workplace. So these are just some of the most common ones that are reported when the employees are asked about how they feel at work. Of course, the number one reason that employees may feel no motivation to continue working is that they feel like they're undervalued. I'm sure all of us who've worked have been at some type of situation in which we're the only ones there. We're doing all we can, and then the boss, our manager comes in. He doesn't even give us a side glance. He just keeps on going, and you feel like, what am I even doing this for? If he's not even going to look at me, why do I try so hard for him? And that's just one of the most common things. So, like, as a manager, it may it seems pretty obvious, right? Just employees that put in hard work, you would should have do the bare minimum and not acknowledge the effort they're putting forth for you. Alongside that, there's another major issue is being disconnected from the workplace culture. Now, this is something that can be hard to fix because how do you tell a person who's used to like we wake up at 8 a.m., we're doing our meeting at 9, and we're done by 2, and then how do you get across to them that your group doesn't necessarily do that? Maybe it's not 9 your meeting starts; it starts at 1, and you go to 3 because someone slept in a little bit late. So this is why it's important to when you are first putting your group together, you make sure that everyone gets across what they expect out of each other. Now, of course, looking through this, you might have noticed something a bit strange on the list, and that being equal treatment. How can you say that everyone being treated equally results in a negative motivation? Well, this actually relates back to being undervalued. When many employees have stated that when they look at their team and see the guy who's not doing anything and he gets the same amount of praise or acknowledgement as the guy who's spending 24 hours working on this project, they feel like, what's even the point of me doing it? Like, even if I do my best, I'm no better than the worst. And the people who aren't putting much effort look forward and say, why do I need to improve if doing this little is enough to get me this far ahead? Alongside then, of course, improper management being the last major cause of employee low motivation. Because when they look at their manager and see that he is not setting good examples, making sure that the team is on topic, they feel like there's no point in any of them working there. So now that we talked about what are some reasons that it decreases, we can talk about how you can actually do the reverse and increase it.
All right. And now, just to get it started, just as a quick statistic, that's actually reported that over 57% of employees have reported leaving position due to bad management, as it says right on this slide. And that's just a great leeway into talking about raising motivation, because if people are not motivated through their bosses, they are not going to stay on their position, and they're not going to put forth their best foot forward. And without having management there that cares about the employees, then nothing's going to get done. So supporting bosses is one of my first things to talk about for raising motivation, and having a good boss is just a huge, huge help. We've all heard everyone just be use that common saying of people leave bosses, not jobs. And as that blast statistic showed, it's very true. If people are feeling undervalued when they're coming into work because their boss is not giving them the time of day that they deserve, the boss is generally rude, doesn't care, uninterested, doesn't communicate well, is not a complete lack of understanding, and things like that. If an employee does not feel valued at their job, then they are not going to put their best foot forward, and they're not going to potentially even stay at the job. And it is up to a boss or a manager or a leader position of some sort to ensure that. Another thing that raises motivation is there's actually countless strategies that companies use, everything from Maslow's hierarchy of needs, as you see on the slide, or Locke's goal setting theory, Skinner's reinforcement theory, Adams' equity theory, and then more and more. The only one we're going to have time to go into today is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And the way that that works is essentially states that all people have a set of needs, starting from physiological, like food and shelter, up to love, self belonging, esteem, and self actualization. Now, where this comes into play in the workplace, for most people, well, of course, it provides money, which gives you food, shelter, yada, yada. But a big thing is when it comes into the esteem and the self actualization parts of the Maslow's hierarchy. This is actually where previously we talked about Amazon and how they had a really unique approach. They very much tackle those last two parts of the hierarchy, esteem and self-actualization, and they're looking for people that aren't working there just to get a paycheck. They're looking for people there that are there to do great things, to reach their best potential, which is why they push their employees so hard and why their unique practice for motivation works so well. Another thing that's really important is having a functional and well working and oiled reward system, having incentives for employees to work well. Now, we've all probably been in some unnecessary reward systems, such as there are many places trying to use competition and other things like that to try and increase sales and incentivize employees. And then using those competitions, there's like a reward where, I don't know, it could be a gift card or something like that. But a lot of times, all that ever does is it increases that unnecessary competition at work and creates just a hostile work environment where instead they should be trying to promote cooperation versus competition. But there's lots of functional reward systems that companies do use and should continue to use based off of just like raises, of course, but they need to be based off of performance and not connections in the company. There's monetary incentive, like just end of year bonuses, raises, as I said. There's some companies like to give stocks out for their company to their employees, benefits. And then another big one that comes back into Maslow's hierarchy of needs is the recognition and appreciation received from other people within the business. To be able to just have that slight pat on the back, even if it's nothing huge, to be recognized that you're doing something is huge. And then the last thing for raising motivation in the workplace is just promoting fairness between employees and limiting what are called organizational politics. So this comes back into where promotion should be based off of performance and not connections. Just because you're buddy buddy with the manager does not mean you should get that promotion. It should be based off of um, those who are working the best. And then should promote fairness within the organization. And then another thing is one of the number one stated uh, motivations for employees is having a general sense of purpose in the job. And limiting these organizational politics is what can allow for people to get that sense of purpose, whether that is, putting food on the table for their family or um, becoming the best they can at their job. It depends on the individual, and you need to, it's up to the organization to find those motivators for their employees and then build off of them. And then we've so those are some of the really big ways you can promote motivation at work, just by using uh, appealing to people's needs, having bosses that actually care about the job and their employees, rewarding people in effective ways, and then making sure that the organization's culture is fair and you're limiting the amount of bad practices in the politics in the organization.
All right, so I'll just give us a quick conclusion. So looking back over this, like, it's important to know that even though, as we stated, the 2019 Gallup survey says 35% of employees are motivated or engaged, and only 13% are disengaged, those numbers seem good, but you have to realize that means over 50% of employees aren't in those categories. They don't feel engaged or disengaged. And while being not disengaged is good, it is important that employees who are motivated to do their work will do better. So you always want to take stock of how motivated your employees are feeling and how you can better help them feel motivated to work with you. So with that said, I think that's the end of our motivation speech, and thank you for being with us.
You guys have a good summer.